everyone. What's past life regression? What's an inner life? Does a soul enter the body immediately upon conception? And why would you want to get a past life regression? Because something that happened to you in another life help you in the present life? We're going to find out all that and more tonight. And now for What's the Illusion? Tonight, it is from an article by Dan Beaton from the Center for Economic and Policy Research. The Carter Center released its pre-election report on the Venezuelan electoral process. The response from the U.S. media has been mainly silence, except for papers like the L.A. Times, the New York Times, and the Washington Times suggesting possible fraud, government recrimination against opposition voters, and possible violence that could result from people not accepting the election outcome. The New York Times interviewed an opposition voter who claimed to be afraid to vote for Hugo Chavez's opponent since it might put her future career in jeopardy, despite being perfectly willing to be cited by name in the article and despite making her political inclinations very clear via social media. What does the Carter Center say about the possibility of fraud? They say it's the most open process to date, according to opposition technical experts. The report also notes Venezuela started a database of fingerprints over 8 years ago to be able to prevent multiple voting by one person or impersonation of voters. And the database is nearly complete. Everyone has their fingerprint to vote except for 7% of the voters, which will be able to do that when they go to vote. The system is intended to address one of the complaints from both the government and the opposition. In places where party witnesses weren't present, the president of the voting table could stuff the ballot box electronically by repeatedly activating the voting machine him or herself. Regarding the supposed media advantage of Chavez over Capriles, the Carter Center report noted the market share of state-owned media, particularly TV, is small. According to media consultants, Venezuela's state TV channels have a 5% audience share, 61% watch privately owned television channels, and 33% watch paid TV. Ultimas Noticias reported a distinct media advantage for Capriles over Chavez in campaign coverage and private media. The opposition coalition is satisfied with the integrity of Venezuela's electoral system. It is U.S. voices that are not, along with some of the more extreme members of Venezuela's oppositions, and perhaps Venezuelans who have been led to believe the ballot isn't secret by opposition media. Prominent U.S. newspapers are at least supposed to have some objectivity in their reporting. I mention this for two reasons. One, very few families control the media here in America, so you basically get the same old news and you're not going to get objective reporting. And, why do we hate Chavez so much? Again, I'm going to talk about my buddy Greg Pallas, but Chavez kicked the oil companies out. It was a poor country, and he said, hey, U.S.-owned oil companies, we're going to kick you out of here, and he took care of his country. So I'd encourage you to, again, always question what you're hearing in the media. And here's a country that has a great electoral process, much better than what we have here in America. And can your vote be stolen? Absolutely, and we'll get to that as the election comes closer. But that's What's the Illusion for tonight.
Oh, no.
So now I'm going to tell you about tonight's guest. Dr. Georgina Cannon is an award-winning, board-certified, master consulting hypnotist, and in 1997 founded the Ontario Hypnosis Center, which is Canada's leading hypnosis training facility and clinic. An accredited life coach, she is recognized as the public face of hypnosis and the body-mind connection in Canada and is a respected member of the complementary health community. Georgina is a regular guest on national and international TV and radio programs, and her work has gained her prominence as a source for news and feature articles on hypnosis. Georgina has written 2 books, Return, Past Life Regression, and You, and Return Again. Dr. Cannon teaches regular hypnosis workshops at the University of Toronto School of Social Work. Welcome, Dr. Cannon.
Hi there. Hello.
We're glad to have you, Skyping in all the way from Canada.
Well, it's not that far. It's just across the border.
It's a little bit. So let's get to it. For people who don't know, can you explain what past life regression is?
Yes. Past life regression, if you believe in reincarnation, really is about taking on another body with your soul. Your soul leaves the body that you're in and goes into another body. When you die, your soul doesn't disappear. It just goes into another body and lives a life that encourages the soul to grow and evolve and get closer to the light, because that's the goal. That's the goal always, is to move closer to the light or the isness or to the being that we call God.
I've always said often on this show that while I believe in tons of things, I always retain a healthy sense of skepticism. If I hadn't done a past life regression myself, I would think, that's kind of pushing it there. But I would like you to maybe make suggestions. We've got a lot of questions here, but I found it took me 3 or 4 tries to find the right person to do a past life regression with. So what advice would you have when someone is looking for someone to do this with?
That's the first time I've been asked this question. I think it's a terrific question. First of all, make sure that they're trained. This is not something that they learned from a book somewhere. Make sure that they have your best interests at heart and they want to take you through the process, not tell you what your process is, not tell you what your past lives are. So their questioning should be very non-committal, very open and gentle. Also, make sure that you trust them. So meet them. It doesn't hurt to speak to them on the phone beforehand. Honestly, we spend more time, I think, choosing a flavor of ice cream than we do choosing a hypnotist or a doctor many times. So I think it behooves us to spend time talking to the person that's going to do this work for you and with you and help you find where your soul belongs. And also, you have to really trust that person because part of you is going to let go. Mm-hmm. Part of you is going to just allow them to lead you into other lifetimes and in between lifetimes.
Can you share with us what led you to try and get a past life regression? Because if memory serves, your background, you were an investigative reporter, correct?
Yes. I was an investigative reporter. I was a journalist in England and a journalist here in Canada. Here I wasn't an investigative reporter. Mm-hmm. Here I was a fashion editor, and a writer is a writer is a writer. And also I did a sort of mezzanine beat on the newspaper. But I've always been involved in the metaphysical. Growing up in England, we really do believe there are fairies at the bottom of the garden, and we really do believe in spirits and ghosts, and it's not a surprise. So when I left the corporate world, because I was running a very large PR company, I was running the Canadian offices, 4 of them, in Canada for an international PR company. And when I left that, I wanted to find something that would give back, something that would help people become the best they could be. So I looked around. I took Reiki classes and became a Reiki master in color therapy and aromatherapy and happened upon hypnosis. And the minute I took it, I realized this was where I wanted to spend my time because this enables the person to find their own magnificence. They really do discover that they are more than they seem once you bypass the critical conscious mind and get into the subconscious. And immediately after I did that, I looked around to find out how I could use this in a sort of spiritual way, in a metaphysical way, and discovered Henry Bolduc, who was teaching past life regression, and I took that there in the Blue Hills of Virginia, which was a wonderful experience. Then shortly after, well, not that shortly, I guess 7 years ago, because I'm talking now 17 years ago. So 7 years ago, I studied with Michael Newton to do the interlife, the life between lives. And it's miraculous work. It's extraordinary work. It's very honoring and humbling and awesome. The hair on the back of my head rises every time I work with a client. I've worked with 2 today doing past lives. So, yeah, it's magical.
Can you tell us what inner lives are? Because I did not hear that term until I read your book.
Oh, okay. We have that wonderful saying of one door opens, another one closes, but the passage in between is difficult. Well, unlike this life, when you do the passage in between lifetimes in the spirit world, it isn't difficult. It's extraordinary. So what you've done is you've left your body behind and you've gone totally into spirit, into soul. And this is where you meet your guides or guide. This is where you find out your own soul name. This is where you find out your soulmates in your soul circle. So the people that you travel with in a sort of pod from lifetime to lifetime. This is also where you may go to the library and read your Akashic records or other information that the soul wants to take you to. This is also where you may go to the laboratory and learn how to manage your own energy differently, your intuitive energy, your psychic energy. You also may go to a place of rest and recuperation if the soul has been damaged and you've had some really hard lives. Then finally, not finally, but penultimately, which I love that word, penultimately, you go to the council of elders, which is a place of kindness and acceptance and generosity and deep wisdom, where you have a gathering of souls, some of whom you may recognize, who advise you and give you counsel. And finally, you go to the place where you choose this body for this lifetime, for this soul purpose. And some people try on 2 or 3 bodies in the journey. Other people just zoom and go right into it. No. And you also find out why you chose your parents, why you chose your family, which is always a huge aha, or a, I did what, which always makes me laugh. And it's a purely spiritual journey.
And how long, I'm going to assume that it's different for each soul, but is there a rough time period that you spend in the inner life before hopping on to your next life?
That's unknown. Some people, the fastest turnaround I've heard of is 18 months. Although some people do say that the new child that is born in the family has a recently passed grandparent soul. But I've never read that or heard that in research. The fastest turnaround I know of is 18 months. But there are people who hang around for hundreds of years before they come back.
And has it ever been described to you? Is it like a doctor's waiting room, or is it that fantasy house that maybe you always wanted, or no idea?
No, not really. People do interpret it differently, I must say, but by and large, those are the stations that people follow, whether they've read about it or not. And when I ask them find out why this is time for you, or how did you find out that this is time for you to reincarnate, they will say the council said it's time for me to move on, or they will say my guide told me it's time for me to move on. One guy actually said, well, I don't want to go, but I'm sitting on my chair and my guide's standing behind me tipping the chair, so I fall off. I literally fall out and fall into my next lifetime. He was very funny. And all of this, of course, is done in hypnosis.
And I want to remind everyone, if you have a question for Georgina, you can chat it, and I'm happy to ask, or you can call us at 919-518-9773, or Skype in at Computers 2K Voice. Let's talk about the soul-body agreement. What is that about?
You choose your body to help you achieve your goal as a soul. So, for instance, when I chose my body in my interlife journey, I got this one. And I was hoping for something very different. I was hoping for long legs and long blonde straight hair and to be absolutely
you and me
gorgeous.
both.
I know. And when I asked why this body, and I was told because it's serviceable and strong and will enable you to do the work that you're here to do. And it made sense. Other people, for instance, one of my clients chose the body, and again, I say why female or why male, and she chose the body of a young woman, younger than as a lifetime, because she was supposed to work in childbirth. She was supposed to have many children herself, but also work in childbirth, so she needed to experience that. Some people, especially gay guys, always want to know why they come in as gay. And often it's to do with learning to handle difficulty, or being an outsider, or learning to find your light, find your resilience. You have to learn to overcome shaming, or you have to, it depends on the culture they come from, of course. You know, Toronto is a very multicultural city, so we get a lot of different types of people coming in.
And we have a question
so it's
for you.
Quite outstanding.
We have a question for you. That's okay. Did you finish? Did you finish your thought? I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Violet Spiral says, I wonder what dimension the inner life exists at. I would assume it is at source level, which is the highest level.
It is just below source, because remember, we're still aiming to get back to source. Where one of the reasons that we do the interlife is to get ready for the next life so the soul can evolve and get higher and higher to return to source. You know, we're all splinters of the light, and we all want to go home. And one of the effects that these interlife journeys have with clients is quite often they weep. They are so thrilled to be going home. They're so deeply moved, and they say, I feel like I'm going home. And sometimes they don't want to come back.
Why would it be beneficial? Now, I haven't experienced this, but I'm thinking as you're talking, I've done a past life regression, and it was very fascinating, and I gained some insight into this lifetime. But what insights could you gain from the inner life? Is there anything that would benefit you? What could you learn from that? For instance, go ahead.
No, you tell me, for instance.
Well, when I had my past life regression, I was a man. It was in Japanese culture, and I learned. I can't remember off the top of my head what the lesson was, but it was like, okay, that makes sense in this life. But I felt I'd learned something, and how can I apply it to my current life? And I'm thinking, well, if you're just kind of hanging out, and maybe it would benefit you. I don't know, how would it benefit you knowing who your parents were last lifetime when it's not this lifetime? Does that make sense?
The benefit really is understanding what your soul thumbprint is, why you're here, what your soul purpose is in this lifetime, but also what you bring from lifetime to lifetime. When I found out that my soul thumbprint, I mean, it's funny to use the word thumbprint when you don't even have a body, but you know what I mean. Soul thumbprint is that of a teacher. That made a lot of sense to me, because even in the corporate world, I would spend hours with the CEO and senior executives on not business time, talking with them about their family or about how they can deal with difficult employees. So it's always been as a counselor teacher, which is really interesting. And I never thought about it that way, and it made a lot of sense. The other thing that happens is you get a hugely different picture, almost an eagle eye view of how you're connected to every single living thing and being on this planet and beyond. You suddenly realize that you're not alone, and that's very profound. You're not alone through time or space. And for a lot of people, that makes a huge impact. They become much more of a humanitarian. They become more caring. They become more aware of their power as one person to another.
And we have a question here for you from Lisa on chat. Why would one choose a physical body with a multitude of extreme and chronic health problems?
Maybe you need to learn resilience. Maybe you need to learn to deal with what is rather than what could be. One of the stories I tell when people ask me similar questions is that I have worked at a hospital where teenagers have been physically challenged, either through accidents or whatever, and they usually end up in wheelchairs. And if you have 3 young men who through accident or whatever become quadriplegic, one will become a victim and go on the social system, one will become an athlete, and one will become a CEO of a company. So what you do with what you're given, which is sort of the karma, the hand of cards you play with, says a lot about how you live your life, what you're preparing yourself for the next life. So if you have these multiple issues with the body, how do you deal with it? How do you live your life? With grace, or do you live it as a victim? That's what it's about.
Outstanding. And we have got another great question here from Tylenol Jones on chat for you. Is this a constant process? Does the soul always come back, or is there some sort of end to the process?
Well, hopefully there's an end, because otherwise I don't know why we'd be doing this. The goal really is to go back to the one light, to the isness, to God. And it's an evolvement from what I understand and from what I believe. And I can only talk from what I understand and what I believe. I don't have the empirical truth. I am not God. Although my animals sometimes think I am when it's about food time. I just feel that we are aiming towards going home, and home is really where the light is, where the isness. I don't know how else to say it. Where the source is. That's what we're aiming for.
And there's a follow question from Tylenol. Then I know we have Amnon has a question he wants to ask. So what happens when the soul gets there?
Hallelujah. Amen. And welcome home. And thank you. I love it. And we choose to become, if we want and if it's appropriate, we become avatars and help others. And some become what we call archangels, I guess, or angels. We become helpers from the light.
Now, Amnon has a question.
I've got a question, Georgina. Mm-hmm. First of all, since all these souls are sitting somewhere, are there new souls being born? Or it's a recycle thing?
It's a recycle thing. It's the original green process. It's the original recycling. And people talk often about how come there's more souls, more people now than there was,
right.
1,000 or 2,000 years ago. And first of all, we don't know that. Nobody was counting populations then.
True.
But secondly, they're coming from other planets. We're not the only planet that's inhabited.
And I have a comment to people that don't believe in this. Mm-hmm. 40 years ago, back in Israel when I was in the military, my colonel was using hypnosis for certain things. And on Yom Kippur, we were on duty, and his driver, who was a Moroccan Jew, almost illiterate, wanted to stop smoking. Mm-hmm. So I said, yeah, I'll do it, and I'll do some other things with you. I just bought my first reel-to-reel portable tape recorder. And I said, Mutzi, do you mind if I record it? He said, no. He hypnotized him. He took him back slowly, and he got him to the point where he had his first haircut. Mm-hmm. And he took him back to the day when he had his circumcision.
Mm-hmm. Ouch.
And it was an ouch. And then he took him back to 18-something.
Oh, 18-something, okay.
And the kid started speaking fluent German.
Yeah.
My colonel was of European descent, so he could understand Yiddish, which is pretty close. Mm-hmm. And it was amazing what Yossi was telling him, the stories that he was telling him, what he's doing, and he's living in Leipzig or something, I don't know, and he was going to the post office. And so I'm a person who needs to see things before I believe them, and I've seen it. Now, he could never, I don't know why, he could never hypnotize me. He said, no, I'm having a hard time. I don't know why you're resisting, but it was, I'm a firm believer in this because I've seen it.
Yeah. I have hypnotized for the CBC here in Toronto. We did a 3-part series on past life regression, which still is playing on the History Channel and Discovery Channel from time to time. And one of the young women spoke Hindi, and she didn't know that language. That was just part of the life she was living at the time. She spoke Hindi.
Georgina, I don't know if you've seen this, and then we've got a couple questions here on chat. What I believe the most profound, or if you want to call it for lack of a better word, proof of past life regression. There's a boy, I believe he's here in America, who was a fighter pilot in World War II. And you see, it was an interview with his parents, and this kid described, he's 6 years old, describing jumping out of the plane's going down in flames, knew the sisters were still alive, and drew all these things. And to me, it's just, there's no other way to explain it. Have you seen that clip?
No, I haven't, but I've seen others like it and read stories like that, and no children like that. It's not unusual. Up until about the age of 7, children remember very clearly other lifetimes. It's been proven over and over again. And there's no mystery to it. I'm a pragmatic journalist. If I didn't think it was real and it wasn't of value, I wouldn't be doing it.
And we have a couple.
It's not woo-woo to me at all.
Oh, I'm with you 110%. We've got a couple great questions here on chat, too. Lisa would like to know, do you take people into future lives?
Yes, I do, but not very often. They have to have done some other work first. They have to be clear and clean. They have to have done past life regression so they know how to take the journey. The downside to future lives, I believe, is that we change our mind all the time. So if you are going to work and you take a different detour today, your future will change than if you took your regular trip. So how can we be sure that the place you go to is going to be real? Because you can change your mind tomorrow. You can do something entirely different. You can decide to move to Spain, or you can decide to move to Morocco or South Africa. And therefore, your future would be different because you were making a decision. Now, the wonderful thing about that, of course, is this planet has free choice. So we get to choose how we live each and every moment of every day, which means our future changes, which is how we build karma. Right?
We'll get to that in a second, but we've got a couple more here questions. Lisa said, are there people that should not be regressed? Like Amnon, apparently.
Actually, I'd love to work with Amnon. I worked with my nephew in Israel, actually, too. So, and we did it in English, and that was fine. But I'd love to work with Amnon because my bet is that he's very close to slipping into a past life. We could do that and then broadcast the results. It would be fun. Yes, the people that should not be regressed are people who are severely depressed or who have multiple personality disorders, or who are schizophrenic. In other words, if they are mentally unstable or mentally ill, I just wouldn't recommend it. Also, I think if they have seizures, I'd be very loath to do that, because if they had epileptic fit in one of the sessions and we don't know what triggers it, I just wouldn't want to do that. I mean, the safety of the client always comes first. Plus, anybody that doesn't want to go, why would you do it?
Mm-hmm. And if you can just sum up the feed quit out on Tylenol Jones, and he had asked earlier if you could just sum up with this. He said, is this a constant process? Does the soul always come back, or is there some sort of end of the process? And if there is an end, what happens when the soul gets there?
Well, we're returning to the light. I mean, is that what he's talking about? Is it endlessly recycling? What I will say is, if we don't learn the lesson in this life, if we don't learn not to be a victim, or we don't learn to find our own light or own ourselves or learn resilience or whatever it is we're here to do, then we have to come back again and do it.
So that's how karma relates to reincarnation. So until I get rid of all my karma, I'm going to keep coming back and back and back, correct?
Well, it's not only getting rid of the karma, it's changing it. So if you change your thoughts and behaviors and deeds, then you can change your karma. So if you always think of yourself as a victim, or you think of or if you're always emotionally distant and you don't live in trust, if you don't trust yourself and you don't trust others, then if you don't learn trust in this lifetime, you're going to have to come back and learn to do it or try again.
Well, this lifetime I've beaten the victim mentality. It took several years, but I'm done with that. I don't want to do that again. So that brings up another question. I'm done. Scratch that off the bucket list. How do we choose our next lives? Like, I want to be a rock star, making $1 million, doing nothing, whatever. How do I choose that? How do we do that?
Well, it depends on the soul journey. If the soul journey is for you to learn to be humble, is to learn humility as an example, then one of the choices you'll have in that area of the interlife, where you get to choose your body and life, will be one of those bodies that the council has decided to put up for you for offering. You can choose to go that way, or you could choose to be a nun or a Tibetan monk, or you might have 6 or 7 choices on a way of accomplishing your soul's mission, which is to learn humility.
Yeah,
and that would be an interesting one. As you come back as a rock star and you learn humility, that's the choice you make. So you're making it really difficult for yourself unless you happen to be Sting or someone like that.
Hey, you know what? I'm willing to give it a go. I'm willing
What's
to...
your name? What's your rock star name?
Oh, you know what? I haven't thought that. I think I want to be a drummer, though. It's always been... I could see a really rockin' guitar player. It's one of the two.
I think you should run a contest about giving you a name for your next lifetime as a rock star.
You know what? That's fantastic. I'm going to do that. So anyone out there, you all heard it. You got a name. Uh-oh.
And I'm making a list of what anybody wants.
Oh, and Amnon will keep a list. But we've got a couple more questions here for you on chat.
Spangles. I want to call you Spangles.
Oh, Spangles. Okay, I can work with that. Violet Spiral asks, are we in a time period when we can transcend karma? In other words, work through past life stuff through this life.
That's the point. You do work through your past life stuff in this life, but you also have to work this life stuff too. So you can't do what I call a spiritual bypass. You can't go into past lives and deal with all of the issues of before and then go through this life like it's La La Land. You really do have to work this life. You have to do what you came here to do. You have to be kind and generous and thoughtful and gracious and in behavior, word, and deed, as well as do your work.
I've personally noticed I belong on a couple chats on Facebook, and it seems a lot of stuff is coming up for people, but it's being released rather quickly. And I'm noticing that, and my observation is the stuff's coming up, you're either going to release it and deal with it and move forward, or if not, you're just going to get stuck and continue to, what I would say, beat your head against the wall. Do you have any observation on that since you do past life regressions?
Yes, I do. One of the concerns I have is that because this work is becoming more popular, people are inclined to take it and use it as a panacea and say things like, well, it's karma, it's meant to be, or if it's meant to be, it's meant to be, and I can't do anything about it. So they're giving up ownership of themselves again and turning it into a psychic phenomenon. They're blaming it, instead of blaming the mother or the boss, they're now blaming it on karma. So it's the same thing. I think we whatever happens, we have to process this life. This is the most important life. This is what we have right now.
Right.
So if I say to you that hypnosis and past life and in between lives, interlife, is only a tool to enrich this life so that you can progress and move up in the next one, closer to the light, closer to home, that's really what it's about. It's very simple, really. We make life so complicated. It really is very simple.
I want to expand on that, but just really quickly, we have a follow-up from Tylenol, who said, if you could just touch on Tylenol Jones. What happens when the soul no longer has to come back?
Then you become a helper, an avatar, or what some people call angels or guides. You are pure spirit. Some I have, not many, maybe 2 or 3 in all the years I've done this, have gone to other planets to help them evolve.
Oh, I like that. If only if I can be blue, like they were in, what's the
Avatar.
movie? Avatar in the movie. We have a great question here from Lisa, and I want to remind everyone, if you have a question for Georgina, call us at 919-518-9773, Skype in Computers 2K Voice, or chat it, and we'll ask it. Lisa asked, I have seen people who are victim to their other lives in order not to take responsibility for this life. How do you deal with helping them be responsible in the present?
Part of what I put in the book is about assimilation of what you learn in the other lifetimes. And part of that is taking responsibility for yourself. I have, when I work with clients, sometimes I use a flip chart and I draw what I call a blame circle. And I say to them, okay, so how much of this circle is to do with your life as a slave? How much of this circle is to do with your life as, I don't know, a servant of some sort or a prisoner, whatever came up? And then So they section off the pie, if you like. Then I say, okay, so where are you in this today? Where's your part in this today? Because there's always a part. You can't separate this out. So sometimes they say, well, it's the outside, it's the circle itself. Or sometimes they take a slice of that whole. And then they begin to realize by looking at it, because some people think better when they see something, they look at it and they see that they do share in the responsibility of how they act and react, never mind the past lives or the current life. They have to own it. Whatever it is, they have to own it. Is that making sense?
It makes complete sense to me. Lisa, if you need a follow-up question, please chat it, and we'll be happy to ask Georgina. While we're waiting for that, can you talk about what are soul levels and what's a soul contract?
A soul contract is a decision that you made in the interlife that helps you decide where you're going and what you're going to do in your next life. Sometimes this soul contract is overarching, so it's a bit like the soul thumbprint. So if you are meant to be someone who enables others rather than be the star, if you like. You're an enabler in the best sense of the word, not the worst sense of the word. That you enable others to achieve their goals or to achieve fulfillment. That's the soul contract you have. And that makes you who you are at the deepest level. That's a deep cellular level. The soul levels are really, as far as we understand, the level at which we vibrate. So the lowest level of vibration really is to do with the earth, rocks, trees, plants, have the lowest vibrational level. But they all have soul. Everything has energy and is connected. The next level is the divas, the spirits, the sprites, the gremlins, the goblins, the fairies at the bottom of the garden. Those that take care of the animals at a spiritual level, and plants and trees and flowers. They take care of them. They're full of mischief, full of life. But again, it's a collective. It's more of a collective soul. And then there's a collective soul of animals, whether it be dogs or horses or foxes or bears or whatever, the collective soul, that's the next level. Then one up from that are the very basic humans, very simplistic survival humans, people who go about their day literally surviving, go from morning to night. They wake up, they do have a ritual of feeding themselves, maybe they plant a few seeds, but they're not very intellectual. They're very basic. And also some of the very violent criminals are at this level. And then the level above that is the level of many of us who are living a life that we choose to become more and more enlightened as we go on. And above that is the level of the enlightened ones, the people like Jesus and Buddha. And I believe people like Nelson Mandela, I believe. And I believe people like Gandhi, Martin Luther King. And then beyond that are the avatars and angels and until become one with God. That's my version of the soul levels from what I've read and learned and connected with and asked, because I channel in a lot of stuff. For instance, when I wrote this book, many times I'd read what I'd written the following morning and think, oh, I didn't know that. A lot of it gets channeled in.
Now, E.T. wants to know, how can I increase my vibration? What can I do?
Meditate. Meditate on light. Meditate on reaching up and out towards, particularly around a full moon and a new moon. The two extremes, and meditate to go beyond self. Imagine yourself outside of your body, really meditate, and find yourself lifting up towards the light of the moon or towards the light of the stars. And that's a very simplistic way of doing it.
What are soulmates and soul circles?
Soulmates, and this is always a great disappointment to people, soulmates are not your beloved forever and ever and ever. Soulmates are people who come into your life to enable the soul to grow. And they can be really discordant people. They can be ex-husbands or ex-wives. They could be neighbors that drive you crazy. They could be teachers that are a real pain in the butt. They can be your sister, your brother, your mother, your father, a good friend. They could be people that help you grow and nurture you. But they are people that come in sometimes for 6 weeks, sometimes for 2 years, sometimes for a lifetime. But their karmic contract with you is to help the soul grow and evolve so that you learn and become better at who you are. That's what a soulmate truly is. And if it happens to turn into someone who has, is terrific in bed as well and who you love desperately, then that's a bonus. But that's not what soulmates truly are.
And then, but what's your soul circle? Because I hadn't heard of that until you read your book, but I've renamed it to my Soul Patrol. So tell us about that.
Soul Patrol.
Yeah, I like Soul
that.
Patrol. It's got a little more rhythm to it.
Oomph to it. Well, there's your drumming again, okay?
Exactly.
The soul circle are the people that you travel with while you're at this level of soul evolvement from lifetime to lifetime. So the person, for instance, that might be in your soul circle, who might be your mother or your sister or a brother or a very close friend in this life, may show up in your next life or a previous lifetime as a relative of some sort. So, for instance, my sister in this life was my father in 2 or 3 lifetimes ago. And the soul circle itself is well balanced. Some bring harmony, some bring humor, some bring thought. So you balance off each other and you help each other grow. Then when one of you is evolved higher because you've learned quicker, doesn't mean you're smarter, it just means you've learned quicker because you've chosen to, you move on to another circle that is a little higher in its evolvement.
Who Z wants to know, would you say most of our ex-presidents, Clinton, Obama, are the enlightened ones like Martin Luther King, Gandhi, Mandela? I would say no, but I'm not
Absolutely not.
Yeah, we have 2 no's here in the studio.
Don't put him in the
First
same.
of all, I wouldn't call Obama an ex-president because I really like the guy. I think I'm getting myself into a lot of trouble here as a Canadian. I know that. Compared to the alternative, I think Clinton is not the level of Gandhi by any means, but I certainly think he is higher evolved. I think he's a considered thinker. I think he can make change. I think his wife certainly could make change. I'm not so sure how much they are like Gandhi or Buddha, but they certainly are above the level of some others that we know.
But
that shall remain nameless, including Canadians.
Sounds like a plan. Now, here's another question from Lisa Brown. Oh, I want to talk about this. I'd forgotten this. Do you experience walk-ins and past life regressions? And can you explain what a walk-in is? And I heard that Anor Sadat was a walk-in. And would like What's that?
Wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me at all.
Because when I first heard this term, he was who they talked about. So if you could, again, do you experience walk-ins and past life regressions? If you can define what walk-ins are for people who don't know what that is.
Sure. A walk-in is a soul that has made a contract with a soul on this planet who's done their job. So sometimes souls have done their job and they just want out. They just want to go home. They want to leave. They've done what they came for. They don't want to hang around for another 20, 30, or 40 years. They just want to go home. And they make a contract with a soul that has a job to do, that wants to come in. And they literally do exchange places. It's like rental. You move into a place and then you move out. No lease is signed, but you just move in and move out. The soul moving in has a specific job to do, and it's usually, from what I understand, about benefiting humanity in some way, shape, or form. And you can see it very clearly when people have had a major accident or a heart attack and have come very close to death. And people say, it's amazing, they're a brand new person. Like they used to be a mean old so-and-so. Now he's kind and he works in soup kitchens and he does all this. And when there's a radical shift and a radical change for the better, you can be pretty sure it's a walk-in. Now, the interesting thing about walk-ins is that they have been given the DNA of memory. So it's not as if they're coming in without knowing what happened before. They have the DNA. It's literally just the soul.
Because if memory serves, and the historians in the crowd can help us out here, Anor Sadat was very and was like, get Israel. Then I believe, I don't know if it was an accident or he spent time in prison, but when he came out, again, the completely different person and worked for peace with Israel. And so that's why a lot of people felt that he was a walk-in.
Walk-in, yes. And that's a typical example. I have an example here in Canada of one of the major editor of a newspaper here a few years ago, who was known as a really difficult, nasty piece of work. And he had a quadruple bypass. And when he emerged back, suddenly he's involved with every charity you can imagine. He doesn't do that job anymore. He's a totally different person. And at that time, I couldn't say anything about walk-ins. And of course, the people themselves don't know they're walk-ins. They don't know. But definitely it's a walk-in, for sure.
I think we'd benefit if some more walk-ins decided to take over some bodies.
Can we line them up? Can we line all these people up and say, empty spaces here, guys. Come on in. We need you. Yes.
We've got a follow-up question from Lisa about that. Can a walk-in come in and out of the same body? Could more than one soul keep exchanging?
I haven't heard that, and I don't know what the benefit would be to that, unless it was a very fast job that they had to do. But that doesn't sort of make sense to me. But then I have limited knowledge of it, so I couldn't answer that honestly.
Now, can you give an example? Well, first of all, do you think we need to heal our past lives? And again, can you give an example of someone that you've done a past life regression with who say something happened in this life, a concrete example, they were able to translate it to their life and how it improved this life?
Oh my gosh, I have so many. My favorite story, actually I have two favorite stories. My favorite story is a woman who came to see me about 4 years ago, and her husband had phoned previously and said, can you help my wife find something? And I said, yes, sure, thinking that maybe she'd hidden her jewels when she went away to Florida for the winter or something. And she came and she said, you're the third person that knows this, but I don't know who I am. And this woman was about 60, 64. And I said, what do you mean you don't know who you are? So she said, well, when I was about 17, I found myself sitting on a bench in the park in Toronto, bruised and scratched, but not knowing who I was. And I sat there for the longest time. I had no purse. I had nothing with me. And I got scared and I started to cry. And this woman came up and said, can I help you? And I told her what had happened, what I knew. So she took me home and she fed me. She gave me some tea and we phoned the police. And the police had no report of anybody missing or any accidents. So I stayed with her for a few days and we then phoned the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the RCMP, across Canada, and they had no awareness. We phoned Interpol, and this is now 3 weeks that she's with this woman. Nothing reported. So she decided that she better get a job because the woman gave her a name, which I'm not going to say what it is. And she got herself a job in a dancing school, which was just up the street. So because she liked to dance, and she was a partner in ballroom dancing at the Arthur Murray Dance School. And that's where she met the man who became her husband. And they got married. Now, all this time, he helped her try to find out who she was. They had detectives, all sorts of people. Lawyers, couldn't find anything. And of course, at that time, there was no internet. So they got married. The only thing is they couldn't travel because she had no papers. She had no passport. She had no papers. She didn't know her health history. She didn't know anything. She came to see me because she was going to have heart surgery, and she wanted to find out if there was any way she could find out who she was before she went under surgery. I did a regression with her, but she wouldn't go back beyond the age of 12. She panicked and brought herself out of hypnosis. So I then did a healing for her around her body, the body-mind connection to get her ready for surgery. And off she went. 5 weeks later, she came back, feeling great, asked if we could do it again because she really, really wanted to find out who she was. She was intrigued. And now, of course, we had the internet, so this was better. I said to her, can we do something different? She said, I don't care. I don't know how this works. Just do what you do. So I took her immediately into the interlife, through the womb into the interlife, and then back into the womb again, so that she was conceived. And as she went into the womb and settled into the womb and felt her mother's heartbeat, she got her name, her father's name, and the fact she was one of 6 children. She was so excited. She didn't get her mother's name. She was so excited she brought herself out of hypnosis and went tearing out into the reception area and telling husband, John, I've got a name. So they left right away. They got on the internet. A week later, she sent me an email with a copy of an email saying, Georgina, you're not going to believe this. And the email said, I think I'm the sister you've been looking for. And it was. And they met, and they were like bookends. It was uncanny. They invited me to lunch, and the two of them looked like they were formed out of the same cast. They both married engineers. It seems that, and she'd met some of her other siblings, it seems that she was in foster care. Mother was a drug addict. Father was abusive. And the children were dispersed all over the place. She didn't want to talk about what actually happened to her and how she ended up in Toronto. But every now and then, from that time, I would get an email or a phone call telling me she'd got more papers. She got her passport, her Canadian passport. She got an American passport. And she can now travel and meet family that's in England. Her life has totally changed. Totally. She knows who she is. And she has her medical records.
That's wonderful. We have a question here from 1,000%. Why is it that we are always famous people in past lives? Well, I haven't
Not
had
true.
that.
Not true. Not true at all. In the 17 years and the thousands and thousands of people that I have worked with, one person was famous. And that she was Anna Pavlova, the dancer. Not true. Most people are soldiers or servants or housewives or ordinary people. Slaves, business people. Not true. And those that go back to biblical times, maybe followers of Jesus or Roman gladiators who hear about him, but not true.
What types of things can we bring in from past lives, such as birthmarks?
We can bring in habits. We can bring in addictions. We can bring in love of music. One of the people who's a friend of mine now, he started off as a client, then became a student, now as a friend. When I first met him, he'd come from a small town in northern Ontario, a mining town, very blue collar, very basic. And he, since he was born, had always, not since he was born, but since he became aware, was always fascinated by things Japanese. And he moved to Toronto, and the first thing he did was find himself a Japanese roommate and take Japanese classes so he could speak Japanese. Now, he's blonde and blue-eyed, and he speaks fluent Japanese. When we did a past life with him, the first thing he said is, ow, my feet hurt, ow. And he'd gone back to being a Japanese housewife whose feet were bound, because that was what they did in those days. And he lived 3 lives as a Japanese woman.
See, I'm convinced I was definitely Italian in a past life. I love the food, I love the culture, I love the men, I love it all.
And the drums.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So here's another important question I want to make sure we get asked. What is past life regression not?
It's not a problem solver for everything. It's not a panacea. It is not a circus. It's not entertainment. It is a soul journey, and we do it with humility, we do it with respect, and we take the wisdom. What it is not is a pill. It's not going to get rid of your headache, although it got rid of my migraines. It is not something that you do for fun.
Georgina, thank you. I think that's very important, because I sometimes find people who are always looking for the next best thing to solve the problem, but not really getting to the root and having to deal with what is really going on there.
Right.
What advice would you have for someone out there that's struggling? They might have lost a job, going through divorce, or just a really difficult time. What would you say to them?
I would ask them, that's too broad a question. I would ask them, first of all, what is it that's working for them right now? And we take so much for granted. And I'm not being Pollyanna here, too, because, I've been through some stuff and you've been through some stuff. So you have to sit down and you have to say, okay, what is really working for me right now? Am I healthy? My heart is working. I'm breathing. I don't look too bad. I can still laugh if I watch a funny movie. What is it that's good? So when you begin to recognize what is good, it takes a bit of the edge off the pain from what has been lost and what is not working so well. And what that does is it clears the mind. It clears the panic. It clears the anxiety to know that you're not all that bad stuff. There's some good stuff. So when people come in and they say, I don't know if you can help me, my whole body aches. And I say, your whole body? And they say, yes. I say, what about your left earlobe? And they laugh. And I say, I'm not making light of this, but does your left earlobe? No, it doesn't ache. What about your nose? No, that doesn't ache. What about the top of your head? Well, yeah, that's sore. Okay, fine. What about your thumb? So what we're looking for are pieces that are working as opposed to what's not working, because we are inclined to make grand statements. We are inclined to say everything's bad, everything's awful. If you've lost a beloved, particularly if it's a child or someone that you love that's been your partner for a long time, if you've lost a job in which you've invested a lot of yourself and your ego, there's no question that leaves a huge hole. No question there's grief there. So it's very important that you find the pieces that are solid and are still working and are still available, so that you have some clarity that can help you get through. Okay. Is that making sense?
Absolutely. But the other question that's very important, and the whole reason I do this show, I want people getting off the couch. So what can they do at the end of the show, tomorrow morning, tonight before bed, to reawaken their brilliance?
Reawaken your brilliance. Understand. My goal, my credo, is to help my clients find their magnificence. Because once you understand how magnificent you are, you never forget it. But also, it's not you that's magnificent. Everybody's magnificent. So what you do to find out how brilliant and wonderful you are is do a stock check. First of all, you have 2 of what you need. You have 2 eyes, usually 2 breasts, 2 hands, and you have 1 of what you need. And it all usually works. So in itself, your body is brilliant. Then your mind, when you open your eyes, you can see, you can hear. So that part of you is working. That's pretty brilliant. That's before you do anything else. Now you remember how to get out of bed. You remember how to put your shoes on, one hopes. You remember how to eat and where your mouth is to put the food. That's pretty brilliant. So that's starting at a very basic level. And I know it sounds sort of humorous and silly, but we take it for granted. We take so much of who we are for granted and our brilliance for granted. So if you really want to know how clever you are and how brilliant you are, go and help someone who isn't. Go and help someone who's struggling with a new job, or someone who is struggling to learn to read. or struggling to find a job, go and help them. Go and help them using your innate wisdom, your experience to help them. Then you'll begin to get a respect for who you are.
Excellent.
Does that help?
Absolutely. Now, Georgina, can you tell us, one, what your website is, but can you also recommend a website for people who would like to find a past life regressionist in their area, and then about your book
Sure.
and any classes or anything that's coming up for you?
Sure. My website is georginacannon.com. The book is called Return Again, Past Life Regression. Return Again, that's what it looks like. I love this webcam. Thank you, Amnon. And go into the website of IARRT, which is the International Association of Regression Research and Regression Therapists. They list good regression therapists who are qualified. So does the Michael Newton Institute, but they're more for the interlife. But I would go into IARRT. What else can I tell you? If you email me, and I might have colleagues that I can refer you to. What was the other part of the question? Sorry, forgot.
No, you got everything.
Okay,
tell us
great.
about the book, your website, and I've put it down on chat so everyone will be able to read it.
Great.
Thank you. It's
Great.
been a pleasure.
It's been lovely. It's been fun. Fun. Thank you. And next time I want a background like yours.
Well, we'll make that work, and we'll hold on, and if you just stay with us, we'll chat after the show.
Great. Okay.
And I want to thank everyone for listening. We'll see you here next week, next Wednesday, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. And for those in the Raleigh Triangle area, if you gain weight during the holidays, your family drives you nuts, I've got a workshop, Body, Mind, Spirit, on stress-free holidays, sponsored by Delta Force Technologies. If you go to reawakenyourbrilliance.com, you can find out all about it, and we'd love to have you. It's on Tuesday, October 30th. All right, everyone. We'll see you next week. Bye now.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, Sundays 9 a.m. to noon. Health In with Debbie Brooke, Mondays 11 a.m. to noon. The Scope of Things with Marilyn Shannon, Mondays 7 to 8 p.m. Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Mondays 8 to 9 p.m. Body Talk with Cindy Prince, first Tuesdays 8 to 9 p.m. Reawaken Your Brilliance with Julie Seibert, Wednesdays 8 to 9 p.m. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it at www.nissancommunications.com. Sponsored by thatvidblasterguy.com, carolinaapparel.com, and deltaforce.net.